Hello and a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Sanam Shantier. Coming up on our show this week, almost a year on since the Islamic State group was defeated in its stronghold of Mosul, and volunteers are still removing the corpses of civilians and fighters from the rubble. Turkey's election campaign kicks off amid tremors in the economy, presenting a potential threat to Recep Tayyip Erdogan's re-election campaign. Also joining us from Vancouver, Iranian boxer Farinaz Lari, who's had to fight her way into the ring. Against all odds, the 31-year-old became the first Iranian woman to win the World Kickboxing Championships. Now, it's been almost a year since Iraq's second-largest city, Mosul, was liberated from the claws of Islamic State militants. Today, according to the UN, more than 90% of the district remains in tatters, while corpses of both civilians and jihadist fighters can be found amongst the rubble.
To fight the stench, these men work wearing masks. 10 months have passed since ISIS was expelled from Mosul, but the old city is nothing more than a pile of ruins, under which thousands of bodies are in the process of decomposing.
Many of these dead bodies are scattered near the bank and under the rubble. Summer is on its way and these corpses are decomposing. They're going to rot and cause diseases.
Among the obstacles, destroyed homes, torn trees, and non-pinned explosives. Certain corpses still wear suicide bombs. There are also grenades and bombs planted by jihadists during the retreat to neighboring Syria.
Our teams are now used to this manual search method because, as you can see, heavy machines have trouble getting into these narrow areas. We depend on human effort and small tools. There's no other way in the city or elsewhere.
More than 3,000 corpses have already been removed from the rubble. Those identified are returned to their families. The others are transported to the mass grave. But even buried, the bodies leave bacteria and disease behind that the river could carry far beyond the old city of Mosul.
Moving on to Turkey, where amid a currency crisis, the incumbent leader has kicked off his election campaign for both the presidency and parliament in what may prove a knife-edge vote on June 24th. This after Recep Tayyip Erdogan pulled the polls forward by over a year. Shona Bhattacharya takes a look at the issue that threatens to overheat the election. That's Turkey's economy.
He calls himself the enemy of interest rates. Recep Tayyip Erdogan has strong economic principles and isn't shy about getting directly involved in Turkey's economy. At a recent campaign rally, he had some advice for his supporters.
My brothers who have dollars or euros under their pillow, go and convert your money into lira. We will thwart this game together.
Dark clouds have been brewing over Turkey's economic landscape. Inflation is at over 10%. The Turkish lira has lost more than 20% of its value compared to the US dollar since the beginning of the year and took a nosedive last week. To save the ship, Turkey's central bank finally raised interest rates for the first time this year to 16.5%. Consumer confidence is down as the economy continues to fluctuate.
Every week the prices are different at the market. Not down, but up. Every week we come here, it gets more difficult.
Since coming to power in 2003, Erdogan has drastically improved Turkey's economic fortunes. Last year, the country grew at 7.4%, largely on the back of a construction boom. The president chose to keep interest rates low to fuel that growth, despite negative side effects. Now, 40% of voters say their main concern is the state of the economy.
So I do not think that recent deterioration will have a major, significant impact on elections. Of course, it will reduce the popularity of the government to some extent, but I doubt that whether that loss of popularity will change the outcome of elections.
Investors are concerned. They disapprove of the Turkish government's intervention in monetary policy that is most likely to increase if Erdogan wins another term. He was voted into office on the heels of a financial crisis and recession, and knows he will be voted out if Turks start blaming him for their economic woes.
The World Cup this summer, for the first time, will feature 4 teams from the Arab world, among them Egypt. But the Egyptians are already facing uncertainty. On Saturday, their star player, Mohamed Salah, suffered from a shoulder injury during the Champions League final between Liverpool and Real Madrid, which leaves his participation in the big game up in the air. Let's listen to some reactions from Egyptians today.
Mohamed Salah's injury saddened us all. This is the first time I go out to watch a football match in my life. His injury made me upset. It broke our hearts. May he get better soon.
When he fell, Ramos caught Salah's hand intentionally, and if his movement had been any stronger, he could have broken his shoulder. It could have been even worse. He did it on purpose, and that made us furious.
Now, Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson rank as the world's most famous athletes, but can you name a female boxer off the top of your head? Well, interestingly, women have participated in the sport for almost as long as it's existed, but female fights have been effectively banned for most of boxing's history, notably in the Middle East, and that's where this week's guest comes from, Farinaz Lari. Thank you very much for speaking to us here on Middle East Matters. Farinaz, with you, it wasn't just a case of conquering the ring. You've always had a real-life battle to get to where you are today.
Thank you for having me. As a female fighter, yes, that's unfortunately how it is. So I feel like the women in the sport, all combat sports, know when they start that they have to push harder in order to make their mark in the world.
But no matter how you look at this, it's not a conventional choice for a career, whether it's for a man or a woman. It's a violent sport.
That is true. However, if you look at it from an athlete's perspective, it is an art. And really what the two fighters are doing are testing their skills against each other, hoping to see the better woman at the end of the match.
Now, can you tell us about the challenges that you've faced going national and then international while representing your country, Iran?
Well, the first challenge was trying to explain to my family why I chose this sport, because they didn't agree with a woman doing martial arts because it wasn't accepted as much as it was for the men. So I didn't have their support at the beginning. They didn't want to come see my competitions or know anything about it. So that was a bit challenging. And then onto a national level, you would always practice, try to get yourself ready for events. And however, there was always men being chosen instead of us. And then once it got to the international level, they would train a whole team of women, 12 weight divisions and men. And then at the end, they would pick 8 men and then maybe 1 or 2 women. So that was quite challenging.
You had the challenge of having to have the hijab, which is the restrictive wear for women in Iran and other Islamic countries. How did you find practicing and fighting with that?
Well, in Iran, when you are fighting in a national level, every official in the stadium are women, so you really didn't have to wear hijab. But then when you all move to the international level, every practice is with hijab. And because the whole country is Islamic government, you already have this background that is how you're expected to appear. Therefore, all my trainings were with hijab. So the first international event that I attended was in Vietnam, and it was quite humid. So I would honestly say I didn't feel that I'm restricted just because I thought that's how I'm supposed to feel until I moved to fighting for myself. And then I took the hijab away, and that's when I realized how, first off, I was very cold because I was so used to that humidity. But before that, I wouldn't even recognize it.
But despite all your victories, you've said previously that you've not received much support from Iran. So you're now switching sides and training to represent Canada, where you're currently residing. Does that somehow feel like you're turning your back against your country and possibly your roots?
My heart belongs to Iran, but honestly, every athlete needs to have support and respect from whichever country they are from. And to be fair, I wasn't receiving that from my country at all. However, my people are very supportive. And believe me when I say they are more supportive now that I'm switching teams than when I was in the actual national team of Iran, and only because they didn't even know I existed, because the country didn't highlight the women at all. However, now when I'm in Canada, because it's more highlighted, people know about me and I have more of a support, and I'm honored and very grateful.
Farinaz Lari, world champion, Iranian Canadian boxer, thank you very much for speaking to us here on Middle East Matters.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for us this week. Remember, you can always get in touch with our team via our Facebook page, Middle East Matters France 24, or send us a tweet. Thank you for watching.